It was in the spring of 1999. I was out doing some shopping with our kids. Our children at that time, our daughter was about a year old, our son was about 20 months. And I was actually at Beechwood Place, and we were done shopping, and I was heading eastbound on Chagrin. I had just crossed over the 271 bridge, and I was in that stop and start traffic that's very often at that intersection, waiting to pull up to Richmond. Anybody know that spot I'm talking about? Okay. All of a sudden, bang, I hit the car in front of me. Ooh, I was glad I wasn't going that fast, right? But at the second that hit, all of a sudden, two babies in the back seat burst into very loud cries. And I flipped my head around and I looked at them and I wanted to make sure they were okay. And I figured they probably were because we were going very slowly. And they were just scared. And I popped out of the car and I opened up the back seat and I looked in at them and there wasn't any blood anywhere. So I'm like, thank goodness. And okay, now they wanted me to hold them, which of course I couldn't do right there in the middle of Chagrin. That wasn't a safe place to do that. So by that point, the man that was driving the vehicle in front of me, he was standing next to me and I asked him if everybody in his car was okay, and he said yes, and he asked about mine, and I said yes, and we went to look at the vehicles. Well, he had a big beefy SUV kind of thing. There wasn't a scratch on his. Mine had kind of like a crinkled up kind of nose, and we popped open the hood to see if the car was drivable. And the stuff from the front had just come to the point where it was barely starting to touch the radiator, but we thought the car would still function well. And I said, okay, that's good, and I got back in the car and I started to drive. Now, I want you folks to tell me, give me your best guess. What do you think the thoughts were going on in my mind at that particular moment? Now, before you answer that question, let me just tell you where I was in terms of my spiritual journey. Let me place you in context. I had been going to Unity for about a decade by that point. I had already received my call to ministry by that point. I had already taken all of the SEE classes required for me to apply to ministerial school. I was just waiting for God to let me know when I should actually fill out that application. That's where I was in my spiritual journey. So what thoughts do you think I had going on in my moment as I started my journey home? There you go, Greg. That was the thought. Yes. So I had all of this stuff going on in my head. Oh, what a stupid thing to do. I can't believe I wasn't paying more. You know, I don't know, maybe you've never experienced that. But I experienced those kinds of thoughts in my head. And it went on like that, I would say, for probably 3 or 4 minutes. And at that point, I became very aware of my son. 20-month-old, just starting to talk. In the back in his car seat, and I could hear him going, okay, okay, okay. And I looked in the rearview mirror, and he's like touching everything. He's touching himself in the car seat, okay. And he's reaching to his sister, okay, okay, okay. And I said, David, yes, you're okay. And he goes, Mama, okay? I said, yes, honey, Mommy's okay. Joshua, okay. Joshua's okay. Boom! Yes, there was a big bump. I hit the car that was in front of me, scared. I said, yeah, I was a little bit scared too because that was, okay? Yes, honey, Mommy's okay. And that went on for maybe another 3 or 4 minutes. And it dawned on me then that my son had just experienced probably one of the most traumatic things of his life to date. And he was doing something to process. Now, he was just becoming verbal at that point. And so the only things he could say were bump, scared, okay. Right. And so it continued throughout the afternoon. And when my husband got home from work that night, first thing out of David's mouth, bump. Yes, honey, we had a car accident today, and there was a big bump when we hit the car in front of us. Scared. Yes, I know that we're scared, and I was scared too, and Desha was probably, okay, yes, we're all okay. We're all here, and we're all fine. And this went on through the evening. We go out to the backyard, and the little neighbor lady, and handed cookies over the fence after dinner, and he told her, bump scared, okay, and I filled in the details for him. And the next morning when he woke up, it was bump scared, okay again. And I had made a decision driving home in that car that I would be with my son while he processed for as long as it took him. And a very interesting thing happened. About mid-morning, he stopped. never brought up bump, scared, okay again. Never mentioned them again. Now I want us to pause in this room and think about the lesson that we can all learn from my son's experience that day. See, my son, 20 months old, nobody told him what to do. He innately knew what he had to do to process the events that were before him that day. Are you with me? Because he knew how to use his drill. His drill. Each one of us was born with a drill inside of us. The drill is what we use, my friends, when it comes time for us to process something in our lives. We were given the faculty of speech. We were given the ability to use our words, to use our thoughts, to move through the events that take place in our lives. Now let's take a look and consider the drill for just a moment. The first time I remember seeing a drill of any kind, I was a little kid. And my mother had said to us, one time among many, 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 your father's doing some work in the basement, go watch what he's doing, right, so that we can learn, right? So there I was standing in the basement, and my dad had one of those old, I think of it as a crank drill, right, the knob on the top, and it had the thing that went around like this, and he was on his knees, pushing down on this thing, cranking, and just sweat pouring off of him. Anybody in here remember one of those kind of drills? Okay, well that's what he was using. Well, my golly, isn't it like that when we start using the tool of denial and affirmation? Now, if you're new to Unity, denial and affirmation is how we phrase our faculty of speech here. A denial in Unity is not a psychological denial, like I'm pretending there is no pink elephant in the living room. That's not what I'm talking about. A denial in this case is to deny that there is anything out there in the world that has the ability to take us out of that sacred space that we all just experienced. There's nothing out there that can disturb the calm peace of your soul unless you choose to let it. That is what a denial is. That has no power over me. Now, an affirmation, according to Unity, is our ability to define what it is that is true, that is good, that is pure. Now, we get our lessons on how to write these denials and affirmations for ourselves, how to use the words that we have been given to move through the things in our lives. We get the guidance from this straight from the Bible, quite frankly. Okay, our Bible tells us I am is the way, the truth, and the life, right? Okay, the Bible says this. So our lesson for that, we get two right off the bat on how to write our affirmations for ourselves. They have to be first person, and they have to be present tense. I am, not I will be, not I was, not you are, or they are, but I am. And then we get our second tip on how to follow that with something that is straight out of the Bible again. Whatsoever things are pure and good and holy and peaceful and harmonious. Remember that passage, right? Whatsoever things are good, that's what we want to follow that I am with. So when we're writing an affirmation for ourselves, we need to be able to say this. I am, my son's case, okay. That was the word he picked to remind himself of the truth. I have asked the greeters today to hand out some cards. Now, if you have a pen in your purse, if you have a pen in your jacket pocket, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and get that out right now. And they're going to give you one of these cards. If you have something to write with of your own, that's fine. If you don't, they can borrow one from your neighbor. I'll say that. Borrow one from your neighbor. During the rest of my talk this morning, I'm going to invite you to once again find yourself in that sacred space within, in your mind, in consciousness. And I'm going to invite you to create a thought for yourself that you will take into this day. Now, while you're getting all situated with all of the logistics of that, those cards and the pens or whatever, I'm going to invite us to think a little bit more about the drill here. I already told you about the first drill that I ever saw. The second kind of drill that I ever became acquainted with in my life was an electric drill, and boy, that was a step up from the old crank jobby, right? I mean, sometimes you'd break a sweat with an electric drill, but it took a whole lot longer. Are you with me? Now, the downside of an electric drill is that you gotta be plugged into the source. True? You need to think about the same thing when you're writing your statements for yourselves today. You need to be plugged in to the truth of who you are. You stay plugged into that. Now, how many of you in your life, you own a drill of some sort? Maybe it's even a battery pack like this. Batteries are really great because you can take them wherever you want to go. Okay. How many of you who own a drill, you bought a drill just because you thought that would be a really great thing to own, right? Oh, I've always wanted a drill. So I took myself to DIY and I just went and bought one that day. All right, well, a couple of you are saying yes, you bought a drill just for that purpose. You always wanted one. Now, I'm going to suggest that you really didn't want a drill. You wanted to be able to maybe do something with it. What do you want to do with a drill? You want to make holes. How many people think that you bought a drill because you wanted to make holes somewhere? Okay. Now let's just pause and think about that for a minute. That would be akin to, Vern here. We got Vern here, and he's standing there at the wall, and he's looking at his hole. Dang, that's a mighty fine hole. And his friend walks up and says, Vern, wow, that's a good-looking hole you got there. Yeah, I'm real proud of that thing. What kind of drill bit you use? Oh, that dirt? I'll make that hole. That was a 3/16 carbide tip. Right?
Yes.
Yeah, Craig's like, oh yeah, I got me one of them. Now let's just push the cosmic pause button here. Did you really want a hole, or did you want a hole so you could put something else in it? Right? See, this is the process of our denials and our affirmations. The denial is akin to using that drill to get out all of that extraneous material. And when you're drilling into wood or concrete or steel, whatever it is, and you're extracting all that stuff from that space, it's messy, isn't it? It's a big mess. Now, Emily Cady, she's one of the first Unity writers. She writes in her early works about this process of drilling and extracting all of this excess stuff. She calls it the process of chemicalization. Anybody in here familiar with Emily Cady's writings? She calls it the process of chemicalization. Now, she wrote that about 100 years ago. Now, let's fast forward a little bit to neuro-linguistic programming. How many people have ever heard of NLP? All right, great. It's the process of telling ourselves certain things so that we can change our consciousness and thereby change our lives. Now, in neuro-linguistic programming, the thought is when you change your thought, you will, in fact, set into motion energy that will shift. I was telling a woman that one day, and she looked